Welcome back to the Sika Strength News Show, brought to you by the Sika Strength app, as always. Now, today we're looking at Abdo Younes, who is an Egyptian sensation. He's one of the rising stars in international weightlifting currently, and thank goodness for that. Now, he's after snatching 180 kilos as a future potential 85 kilo lifter. Now, I messaged Abdo and I said, great work. And he wrote back basically saying, I don't play 85s, which either means he's not going to be an 85, he's going to be 94, which I don't think is the case. Or he was saying he's not going to be messing around in the 85s, which, judging by this 180 kilo snatch, I think that's the case, that he's not messing. He's not playing.
I think it's very, very, very safe to say he's not playing around with these. This is phenomenally good.
So crispy.
There's obviously certain lifts and you can tell immediately that they're near maximal attempts. You know, the catch position might look not so stable. Maybe the pull looks slow. This does not look like a maximal attempt. Now, obviously, in weightlifting, you have these things where you could add 2 kilos onto that barbell and there's no way he could make it. But he seems to have all the power, all the stability overhead. The barbell's in the exact right place for him to stand it back up. It looks like he has more in the tank there.
What I said to him was, I think you've got 10 kilos more on the snatch here, which...
Oh my God.
See, the thing with Abdo here is that he's moved up weight class at the perfect time. So moving up weight class when you're weightlifting, so he's moved up from the 70s, can be an absolute game changer or improve upon where you're on, or it can make absolutely zero difference or just make a lot of your problems worse, especially if you're an amateur lifter. The best time to move up in weight class when you're a weightlifter is when things are going great. This is when your technique is good, you understand the programming for yourself, your strength is still going or it's kind of petering out in terms of how much increases you can make in your pressing, your pulling, your squatting, for example. When you're in this scenario, when everything's going great and you've got a good foundation, moving up in weight, 5 or maybe future 10 kilos, depending on the time frame you give yourself, can be absolutely phenomenal. This is where you keep things rolling, especially if you're a younger athlete. This can be a great idea, preferably if you start from a relatively lean position, which is what Abdo was doing here. He was well muscled, he was lean, his training was going great, clearly had a good structure to his training, as we often see with the Egyptian national team. He's adding weight here and body weight, assuming the rest of the environment is the same. He's obviously making great progress from this added body weight. Now, the problem for other people, and this can happen to elite lifters all the way down to the average lifter, adding body weight when things aren't so great will probably just make your issues worse. We get tons of questions every day on the coach chat, on the Sika Strength app. People either talking about cutting body weight or gaining body weight. It's a super common question, and it's a very fair question to ask because it's a really important variable to consider in your training, especially in weightlifting. When we're strength training, we can quite literally add body weight, sometimes not even put that much extra effort into the lifts, and very often equal or surpass our old maxes. We get better proprioception, stability, we've almost certainly more muscle mass. The muscle mass is doing the contracting. We do squatting, benching, pressing, deadlifting. For the most part, that's going to help us be stronger. It's no guarantee of progress in weightlifting, unfortunately. Whatever level you're at, it's not going to guarantee progress if your technique isn't consistent, if your training isn't smart, if you aren't planning out your sessions and you know what you need to be doing, you know how you need to be moving. Because currently, if your technique is poor and you don't have all your variables down or as close to as you possibly could for technique, if you add body weight, you're going to be changing things like your foot position, how wide you stand, how much you turn out your toes, where you put your hips, where you put your back in extension, how much mobility you've got left, how much mobility you've got in your shoulders, how fast you can move, how your knees need to move, what your arms need to do, what your back needs to do. All of these variables change as soon as you start going 5+ kilos over your current body weight. This is when you're going to start noticing those benefits. So in strength training, when we add body weight, we're adding stability and muscle mass. We're almost guaranteeing some progress. In weightlifting, it's one of many variables. Obviously, the muscle tissue is incredibly important. That's why people lift more when they get heavier, because they have more potential to produce force and more force faster with good technique. But in weightlifting, if you're already in a rocky foundation, if you're in a position where you didn't just snatch 180 from blocks and now you're ready to move up to snatch 180 from the floor in a heavier weight class, which Abdo has done, you're just going to be in a position where you're just going to make all your issues worse, and you're probably going to be fatter and more unhealthy, and your technique is going to be worse. You're probably going to be slower. So it's really important to consider when the going is good, probably a good opportunity to capitalize on that, keep the momentum going, which is an incredibly important part of weightlifting. But if the going is bad, you're stuck in a rut. Don't add to your problems by just getting fatter and slower. That's really important. We've all made that mistake, okay, everybody?
Looking at this lift in particular, right? And it's funny you mention poor technique and getting slower, because both of these things are definitely not happening here. So he appears to be even faster than he was before, and he is laser beam fast underneath the barbell. And also, that technical model doesn't really seem to have changed too much. That change in leverages, that change in biomechanical stacking certainly doesn't seem to be negatively influencing him here. It's funny, when we look at different nations, and we always talk about there being a technical model or a technical framework that athletes should work to in weightlifting, there is a way to do the snatch and a way to do the clean and jerk. But then when we look at countries, you could literally put this in grayscale and block out the face of the lifter, and you probably be able to tell that this was an Egyptian lifter. So what we have here, really long arms, super wide grip on the barbell, incredibly powerful and very, very fast underneath the bar. It's funny, like that is the textbook thing, right? Muhammad Ehab would have looked very, very similar to this when he was lifting. Many of their top level lifters have that. And it comes down to a range of things, right? So obviously the coaching system within that country tends to be consistent. And this is across the board. Russian athletes will look very similar to each other. Chinese athletes will look very similar in terms of their technique. Romanian athletes will look very similar in terms of their technique. And the coaches have a massive influence on that. Those coaches have coached the previous generation of lifters. Those younger athletes are growing up watching those lifters. And generally speaking, we get quite good homogeneity across technical models. The other aspect of it, though, and I think you have to point it out here, is how powerful the Egyptian athletes are. All of them move incredibly quickly. Whether it's snatches and clean and jerks, or with their back squats, with their pulls, anything they're doing in training, they move with a hell of a lot of intent, a hell of a lot of aggression. It seems to be a very strongly or hardly driven system where athletes are really getting hyped up. Athletes are really putting a lot of force into the barbell. We talk about intent in training and how important that intent is. You can see that as a hallmark across all of the Egyptian training systems. And it also makes for really entertaining lifting. Like, something that is incredibly entertaining is people making very fast lifts, being super aggressive with the barbell. It's just a lot more enjoyable to watch than somebody moving very slowly and very serenely.
Part of that training system is obviously the huge amount of variety that the Egyptian lifters seem to employ. So if we just stick with the snatch for the moment, we've got tons of no foot, above the knee, block power snatches. We've got him doing tons of hang variations. We've got normal block snatches from above the knee here, where he's moving very fast. Of course, he did that 180 kilos from blocks recently. We've got normal power snatches here. We've got close grip snatches here. So this is 130 kilos close grip. And he doesn't really bend his arms to get it done. We've got no foot power snatches. Like, the variety of movement here is really interesting, and it's worth thinking about in your own training. The variations can be made really specific to you and can definitely work in your own weaknesses. But all variations, when done correctly with good technique, if you go to town on them, will almost certainly help your own weightlifting. So sometimes there's this thought that programming has to be super specific to me. It's just not the case. In weightlifting, it's a little bit of a fantasy that's happened where there's this idea that super personalized programming has to be an absolute snowflake situation for you. But it just isn't the case for weightlifting. Tons of coaches throughout the years, I'm not saying just from our programs, but this is something the Soviets talked about being a problem back in the 70s and 80s, where they talked about the psychological problem that elite athletes felt that they need to have programs written specifically for them. They went after this to prove that this wasn't the issue, that a well-written program is a well-written program. And in these cases, if you do a variation in your own training, if you pick a random one, but you complete it with good quality technique and you go to town on it, it will almost certainly help your weightlifting. There's a few reasons for that, but essentially weightlifting has just multiple different components. If your second pull is faster with good positions, it's probably going to help your lifting. If you make your first pull stronger, if it's already strong, it's probably going to help your weightlifting. If you improve your overhead stability, if it's already strong, is going to help your weightlifting, because most people can improve upon where they are or add to that, and it's almost certainly going to help your weightlifting. So if you're confused about picking variations for your own training and you're not sure what to do and you're looking for the most special, the most perfect one, you can actually just pick any one. Pick the one that you can do the best technique with. So don't pick something where you have a problem moving your feet, for example. Don't necessarily go for no foot snatches. But even in that scenario, you'd be surprised it probably would help you focus on that position more. But let's say you bang the barbell with your hips, and when you do above the knee hang snatches, you bang the barbell even more aggressively. Try and pick one, again, with the caveat that you can use good technique. I bet you it will help your training. Try and improve that top end weight, do higher volume now, try hit a heavy single later or a good quality technical max later on, and I guarantee you it will help your snatching, clean and jerking, especially for most people watching this who are still in that developmental stage.
The last thing I want to say on that, and it's kind of weighing on top of Garth's point here of the amount of variety they have in their training, is this idea of physical literacy, right? How good or how skilled you are at moving your body around through space. And it's funny, we oftentimes talk about physical literacy in terms of the developing athletes, right? So getting children and young athletes to play as many different sports as possible, get them involved in a host of different things, whether that's things like gymnastics, swimming, where they're actually just moving their body through space, but also getting something where hand-eye coordination is really big, foot-eye coordination is really big. When we get to weightlifters, oftentimes we forget about that level of physical literacy. And I think no group of people is more guilty of this than amateur, intermediate level lifters who are super specific with their training. You're training 3, 4, 5 times per week in weightlifting. All you're doing, all of your physical development is weightlifting. You're not doing anything else. And I think people get pigeonholed into that to a certain extent. Now, with the professional athlete, obviously you're not going to suggest that they go and play five-a-side soccer, or you're not going to suggest that they go and do a upper body bodybuilding piece for 4 weeks or for 8 weeks as part of their training year. But they can look and they can use variations. They can use these longer, more drawn out complexes. They can use the derivatives like Owen was just showing you. And that can develop that overall ceiling of physical literacy even more. I think if you're in the position where you are a amateur level weightlifter and wanting to get better, maybe you didn't play a massive amount of sport as you were growing up, maybe you're an UA, an adult onset athlete. In that case, just developing a small bit more skill, whether that's getting those longer complexes into your warm-up, whether that's doing some slightly different derivatives 1 day per week as you warm up for your hang snatches or something like that. All of that will help you with your general amount of physical literacy, and then that will help you with the specific task of snatching and clean and jerking.
Now, I fear the jerk might leave him down in future.
Okay.
It's hard to know. Sometimes when you get heavier, the jerk can go better, but you also might get a little bit more restricted. It might even be even harder to do that. It's hard to tell. Hopefully it comes true.
If you're a weightlifter and you want to get better technique, one of the best ways of getting there is through video analysis. On the Sika Strength app, you can submit videos to the coach chat. It's me and Owen, and maybe at some point in the future there'll be another coach involved. We'll review your lifts, give you the technical feedback you need, and also help you add some things into your warm-up and into your training sessions to help you fix the issues you're having. Obviously, this is on top of all of the programs that we have, as well as the movement library, as well as your training journal, sets counter, all of those tools to make your training as effective as possible.